And then we have Sasha, we have an artist here, artist and a researcher with a Swiss-Haitian family background, huge heritage. I had a pleasure of having a talk with you here a couple of weeks last week. I don't remember the weeks even, but I think that the one thing which I learned from you is about the art which you have been talking about, these paintings, which really has been like, I have been since you talked it so beautifully, and you have so much to tell, but it's really touched me because knowing, you know, these air stable guns, compressed air stable guns you're working with, but sometimes I understand it's a metal, it's hurting, it's a kind of, there's so many things which actually associated for the socio-political way of the world. And so there's so multi-dimensional way of their thinking, and have a huge respect on your work and you as a person. So
thank you so much.
So now we have Sasha here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the invitation to have me part of your forum remotely from Helsinki to the rest of the world. I'm really glad to be here and talk to you about my work. So my name is Sasha Huber. I'm from Zurich, Switzerland, and my background is in graphic design. And in 2000, I went to Fabrica, the Research and Design Center by Benetton, because in Switzerland, I felt I was there in different studios and knew it, advertising is not my thing. And when I heard about Fabrica, I felt this is an inspiring place and very international. So I was really interested to be exposed to people from around the world. And that's where I met my partner, who is from Finland, and that's how I came to Helsinki. And he was in the new media department, and we started to collaborate together. And we've been since over a decade working about a project called Remedies Universe, which is about oral family knowledge that we all have and share. And so we are interested in that as well, but and we collaborate in other projects as well. But now in this presentation, which is short, I will introduce you to some of my beginnings as well, and how it evolved. So the beginning part was really inspired by my mother's heritage. She's from Haiti, and this is a picture of my family just before my grandfather first moved to New York, and with my mother and the whole family left to New York because of the dictatorship led Haiti in the hopes of a better future. And this is also where my parents then met and moved into Switzerland, and that's why I was born in Switzerland. And later in my life, I was interested to visit the family that remained in Haiti. And my mother always said, no, you're not supposed to go there. It's too dangerous. And we also had family members that got kidnapped in the past. So there was reason for her to be concerned. And I waited the right moment to then eventually go. But in 2004, when I came to Finland and started my master's studies in the, at the time it was called University of Art and Design, and nowadays Aalto, I started to play around with the staple gun, and I don't remember anymore why. And now I see this image that I want to share. I forgot that I had put some slides in there that I want to show you still that relate to Haiti. So Haiti was really the starting point for my practice. But since then, I made other works that relate to Haiti. Also, this is a video of me making uncountable snow angels, which represent the people that passed away in the big earthquake that happened 2010. So it's like a way of, for me, show how I mourn about this way. And it took place here in Helsinki on the snow covered ice, the kind of element that connects to Haiti symbolically. And then one project I want to share as well is about my aunt. And in this context of this forum, and you being interested in fashion, I thought this would be nice to show. It's my aunt, who was one of the early generation Black fashion models in New York. And I was always fascinated about her history and all the archives she has and so on. And in 2010, we went to New York and made a short documentary about her and installation. So this is like stills of that film. And then this is a picture of my brother and we have the same mother, and this was like an homage to my mother and brother as well. So this kind of links to Haiti and my personal history. But yeah, now back to the beginning of when I started or discovered my practice of finding this tool in the workshop, being intrigued by the staple gun. And then when I started to taste it, I really realized it's like a weapon. The weight, the sound, I have to protect eyes and ears, as you saw in the picture at the beginning. Have so much symbolism in there, and then when I tasted it, I realized I cannot just do whatever in this way just for aesthetical reasons. And that was a moment when I again wanted to go to Haiti, and I couldn't go. And suddenly I realized that I could actually portray people that were responsible of the troubles in Haiti. So I kind of turned that tool to become that weapon I shoot back with, and each staple kind of represents a lost life. And as a starting point, when the trouble started in Haiti, I decided to portray Christopher Columbus, or let's say shoot Christopher Columbus in this way, using discarded woods as a way of also discussing how the people have been, gathering wood to build boats to escape Haiti and so on. And also they don't deserve to take a fresh wood, even each wood is valuable for sure, but somehow I wanted to work with discarded materials. And I portrayed also Francois Duvalier, the dictator at the time, and this halo around his head actually represents him saying he was chosen by God to be president for life. And in 1971 he died, and his only 19-year-old son had to exceed his work. So that's how his nickname Baby Dog came upon. So this is Jean-Claude Baby Dog Duvalier. And I really felt through the act of shooting that it kind of helped me to respond to this unjust history through this act of shooting back. And somehow later on, I realized that I used quite much energy to present men that were written down in history and represented in history so much, and I felt suddenly unease about this. I did make some more portraits on this same line, but very soon I decided to turn my attention to persons who were negatively affected by colonialism and violence and so on. So I started in 2014 the Portraiture series called Shooting Stars, which is dedicated to people that were victims of assassination and killing for political, environmental, hate crime and reasons as well. And I decided to portray people throughout history and the present, and exhibit those portraits in an alphabetical order. So you would have accidental pairs side by side. And the starting point was the civil rights movement. And I portrayed Martin Luther King, but then also a person like Noxolo. She was a lesbian African woman who died, or who was killed. And so the shooting became like a way of using, like as a way of showing the wounds and making those wounds visible, and the stapling became a way of stitching those wounds together. And yeah, that is for me like how the shooting back became like now like a stitching of the wounds and tending and caring for those wounds. And in 2017, we were invited to show work as part of an exhibition on Staten Island, and I was invited to extend the Portraiture series Shooting Star. I decided to portray Eric Garner, who was from there. And what was important for me was that and I want to gift that portrait to his mother, because I feel that's the place where the work should be. And so through very interesting circumstances, I got to meet his mother, Gwen Carr. And for me, it's like a way also of showing that it's important to discuss about these stories, but these kind of works should not enter the art market. This is somehow another currency. And this is for me how the work travels to where it should be without it not being shown. So, and I'm interested in what's happening in the States, and this is a work that I made onto a bulletproof vest, stapling a heart on a bulletproof vest. And here you see somehow my workspace and tools that might be interesting to see as well. So the bulletproof vest is really that what would protect people, but why one has to use it, it is very sad. Then I decided to make a portraiture series about persons from the African diaspora arriving as first in the Western world or in predominantly white countries. And I also made it because I learned about Rosa Emilia Clay. She was the first African to be granted Finnish citizenship in 1899. So I portrayed her onto an acoustic board as a means of which symbolizes for me like a muting of a history. And that board is usually used in the space to mute sound. And this then became also an ongoing series. This is James Baldwin. I portrayed him onto the building that he inhabited in the 50s for some years, periodically to work on his first novel called Tell It on the Mountain. And James Baldwin was a writer from the States based in Paris. And his partner then offered him to go to the Swiss Alps to write on his book because it would be more peace. And he was there the first Black man and wrote about his experience in the text Stranger in the Village. And so this is in the public space for everyone to see. And I got to know the house owner and asked permission to do it, and he was okay. And then I contacted also the Baldwin estate to let them know and if this is okay. And then they said, yes, of course, I have no objection to do that. And it's been nice to hear about people arriving there and show, this is kind of a way of showing his presence that was not very visible there at all. And so the portraiture series extended then with portrait of Jani Toivola. He was first Black parliamentarist in Finland. And in 2011, that was until 2019. And with the friends here, we gifted him this portrait, and it is hanging in his home. And then I portrayed also Edmonia Louis in Rome. She was a sculptor from the States, African-American, Haitian, indigenous woman. And in 1866, she moved to Rome because she was interested by the art over there and stayed the rest of her life there. And I collaborated with the musician who was telling me about her originally, wrote a song of her. And I produced the work in Rome during a residency and made a stop motion of me doing this work in the Museum of Contemporary Art in Rome, and then merged it with her music together. It was the first time that I worked this way, and it was 2019, and following year when the pandemic started, I could kind of work in this way because it was not possible to send the physical artwork, so it was a way of sharing and exhibiting the works. Anyways, even it was not possible to show the actual physical work. And this is also from the series. Matthew Henson was the first man on the North Pole. And then he's Yemi, he's a choreographer, Afro-Czech choreographer in Prague. And just to show also how I work in a more abstract way, this is Sea of the Lost. This is a work that commemorates people that didn't survive the Middle Passage during the transatlantic slave trade. And this is, consists of about 200,000 staples. And also here, all the staples represent people that died. And it's for me also a way of thinking about the so-called Mediterranean Middle Passage, of how people try to escape and in precarious ways travel the Mediterranean Sea. So it's a way of commemorating these people. And then in 2005, I'm kind of jumping a bit around, and in 2005, my sister gifted me this book about Swiss involvement in slavery and slave trade. which was the third book about this topic at the time, but for me, the first time to read about this history. Switzerland, as you maybe know, didn't have colonies, but this outlines really well how Switzerland still has much to do with the whole colonial project, and also contributed to its wealth here. And I felt I needed to continue this conversation, and contacted the writer, Hans Fassler. And after that, he kind of told me of what he's up to. Later on, I want to tell him also about my shooting star project. Shooting back project, because Haiti plays a role in the book, and there's something to do with the Swiss history. And this really changed my life, I would say, because what happened after is an ongoing intense work and friendship that developed. And because in 2007, he founded the Demounting Louis Agassiz campaign. Louis Agassiz was known as a glaciologist first, but after he moved to the States, 1864, he moved to the States. And there he developed in becoming one of the most influential racists of the 19th century. And Hans Fassler realized that that history was left on the side completely when during these 200-year birthday celebrations that was not mentioned. There are was celebrated that there are like over 80 places named after him around the world. On the moon and Mars are places named after him, 7 species. So the idea of the campaign was basically to rename one of the mountains in the Swiss Alps called Agassizhorn into become Rentihorn. And here you see a portrait that I made in the line of the shooting back series. The Rentihorn or Agassizhorn is here on the borders between Bern and Wallis, and on the border of 3 communes, which made it very complicated to get through. And it's officially not named Rentihorn, but still the conversation of what was it about to raise awareness of this history. In that sense, it was successful. He invited me to be part of the committee, and I really felt compelled of kind of do more and make an actual action. And so I decided to plan an intervention that was for me then a new way of working. I started to plan to go to the mountain, so I designed this sign. And the original plan was to go there by foot, but I couldn't climb, and I at the same time didn't want to lose time. So the only way of getting there was through the air. And I wanted to be dressed in this way because for me it was also a way of symbolizing the time travel that happened. And it's also for me a way of talking about how one can renegotiate a history that has happened in the past. And in that sense, this was for me important to do it like this. So this shows a couple of stills of the video. As part of this, I also made along the portrait letters to the mayors and UNESCO World Nature Heritage Site and committee, and Kofi Annan was part of that, and all the answer letters became part of the installation. I made a portrait of Renti dressed. And now I just realized that I didn't say what Agassiz actually did. It was in 1850, he used the then new technology of photography to document 7, he commissioned a photographer to document 7 enslaved people on a South Carolina plantation. And one of the persons was Renti, who was born in Congo. So that's the idea, that the mountain was supposed to be renamed after him. And the petition website was very useful. It was signed by, meanwhile, 3,000 people around the world. And certainly we got an email by a woman called Tamara Lanier, who her daughters found that petition website which outlined the idea, and she said that she's the descendant of Renti, so that she's the great-great-great-granddaughter of Renti. And also Delia, she was his daughter who was photographed as well, and they were photographed naked from all the sides. So it's very racist way of portraying. It was the first photographic series of enslaved persons in this way, and the series is owned by the Peabody Museum in Harvard. And then she said she would, like to visit us in Switzerland, and that's where we met for the first time personally. It was very important because she could tell about Rentin, who he was as a human, because those photographs really objectified him and didn't care about who he was as a person, and he could read and write, and he was a spiritual person, and so on. In 2007, I had the opportunity to meet her again and portray her and add to the archive also, because the museum didn't grant her copyright for those images. And that really started to disturb her. And then by March 2019, she made a law. She sued Harvard as owner of these photographs and wants those photographs for her own family, because in a way those persons, Renti and Delia, still are owned by the institution, are still sold in a way. And this is now a very interesting situation, and how, yeah, this is like a life of its own that is happening here, and that can be still followed, because the lawsuit was dismissed and now it's in the next level. And the hearing happened with the Supreme Court 2 weeks ago. So now we're waiting what's the next step that happens. So this is really interesting to follow up. But meanwhile, this starting, I don't know how much time I have, but you warn me, I might have to ending. So I'm speaking too long, but I just wanted to say the Rentihorn project took me around the world because it was a starting point, and I went to different countries like Brazil, where Agassiz was active and having places named after him. He made photographs of people there as well, and made a book with a history professor, started a portraiture, self-portraiture series as a way of reclaiming the body, placing myself at the different sites around the world named after Agassiz. I was in New Zealand, making their work collaboratively with Maori community. And what's happening then now is that in 2017, I worked in Canada at the Agassiz Lake. And now next year, I'm planning a project in Nunavut in north of Canada, together with throat singers I worked with in 2017 already, Charlotte and Cynthia, who will travel with me to the Agassiz ice cap all the way in the north. So we hope that works. And what is really nice is that that whole body of work is now on a tour. The first exhibition was in Kunstinstituut Melly in Rotterdam, and it travels to the power plant in Toronto, followed by the autograph, and then it comes to Finland in 2023. And what is now was a very nice surprise, I was invited to be part of this Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls. So my story is in there. So it just was published. And yeah, get that book also.
Yeah,
Thank
nice,
you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sasha.
I have no idea how long I talked. So.
No, it's a kind of you have such an amazing story. And it's
very impressive. And I think that you have found such a beautiful tone, because it's so difficult to tackle the subjects you're tackling, but somehow you are shooting back with beauty. And I think that is something very important, because that somehow makes the cruelty of the messages even more sort of painful, but beautifully painful. And I think that touches me very much. I was especially intrigued by the sweater of James Baldwin, because you made him so beautiful. You know, he was quite, I think, a vain, happy to be himself man. And so his sweater in your medium looks so so great. So that's so, yeah, it's touching.
He bought
Thank
that
you.
sweater up there in Loikabad, and I found it from a film where he was traveling back there and
Yeah.
talking about it. So
Mm.
yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you.
Super happy that you could join today.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.